Are all happiness the same, or are different kinds? We have different intensities, we have different durations, and we have different reasons or different causes why someone will be happy. Let's explore 3 types of happiness. Illusory happiness is caused by external circumstances, meaning that you need an object, a person, or a circumstance to be the way you want it. An example of this will be, I need to be in the sunset with this person to be happy, or I need this amount of money in my bank account to be happy. This is also called extrinsic motivation. The main problem with this kind of happiness is that it's bound to disappear. It will eventually go away. You're gonna end up losing whatever you're winning first. This sounds a little dramatic, but it's actually kind of true. If you're honest with yourself, you realize that it doesn't matter how much money you get to accumulate, a career, or anything like that. It's not that you're not gonna enjoy it. The problem is that as much as you work for it and you finally get it, you bet one day you will lose it. Things in life happen and change, and what's gonna last? 5 years, 10 years? It's a lot. Great, definitely enjoy that. But if you've been betting all your emotional, psychological, and you've been sacrificing relationships and many other things, is it really worth it? It's gonna disappear after a few years. Or a different way of saying this is like, imagine someone who wants money, status, career, a relationship. As much as you try to get everything the way you want it, it will never really be. There will be always factors in your life that will be out of your control. So trying to define happiness in this way, it creates a lot of trouble and it makes it close to impossible to actually fulfill. And even when you do it, it is temporary. And another reason why this is actually not a good idea to be dependent on external things for your happiness is that we end up hating something that we actually love. If you have someone and all your happiness depends on that person or what that person does, what it is, well, you will end up some way being afraid of this person, being afraid to lose it, being afraid to change in a very subtle way, but we also kind of hate that things we depend on. Another example would be someone who earns a lot of money. That money will disappear. So it's a love and hate relationship in the end, because that object has power over your own happiness. And that is very frustrating and it feels really bad. Rapture will be the second kind of happiness. And it's caused by a state of concentration or a flow state or a state of synchronized alpha waves in your brain. Or another way of doing this is really obviously meditation, which is extracting the capacity of developing your attention to extreme levels. Examples of this will be people doing sport. You see someone just on their bike on the road or running 7 a.m. or late or with rain, and from the outside looks like a really uncomfortable and undesirable thing to do. But obviously these people are doing it because they're feeling a sense of deep satisfaction while doing it. The activity on itself is really not something you want to do, but the fact that you do it stimulates something in you that focuses, brings you here and now, and that brings a different kind of source of happiness. It's doing things for the sake of doing them. You actually may have a hobby or may have something like, for example, dancing, something that feels you don't do it because you're trying to be good. You just do it because you love doing it. It's not about what we do. You could find that state doing literally anything. It's about how you do it. It is very specific qualities on the way you are doing what you're doing that causes this happiness. And this is very freeing compared to the first type of happiness, because in here, it's not bounded to disappear when things go off, because it's something you could do. This is also called intrinsic motivation and intrinsic goals, where basically you are oriented on something, a value. You still need certain conditions, but it's more about the way you approach the situation rather than the situation being exactly as you want it to be. The problem with this happiness, although it's not dependent on external objects per se, it is that it also tends to disappear at some point. So you're only happy as long as you do the activity. You're only happy as far as you're dancing and enjoying your time or doing your hobby, and then you have to go back to work and that bliss disappears. Actually, the word rapture comes from the term in meditation to define high states of concentration. You have an external object, but it's about the quality of your attention while you are observing that object, and that brings happiness. That's why people spend hours and days on retreats observing their own breath. Someone from the outside may think, okay, these people must be very boring. But on the contrary, it brings huge states of enjoyment, just to do something as simple as observe an object that is happening here and now, like the breath. You could have something in front of you, you can do it with a candle, you can do it with a color, an image, you can do it with sound. But ultimately, it's not about what it is, but the way you are paying attention to it that brings about the quality of the experience and the joy of it. And the last kind of happiness, I will call it lasting happiness. This, to start with, require very specific conditions on the person, that they have a deep understanding on how things works, especially what we discussed before on how the actual joy we are looking forward to experience, it is not in the objects. And if it's just in the way you do things and your attention, like in the second level of happiness, that will be also limiting. So at some point it comes the question, could you be in that state all the time, regardless of what you do, regardless of who you are, regardless of how life just works out? And there are two ways people reach this state. One of them is very traumatic experiences, like near-death experiences. Examples of spiritual teachers who reach this state of lasting happiness through suffering is Eckhart Tolle or Byron Katie. It is normally the case to get to this point of understanding by meditating for a long time. All the rest of the people who achieved this state did it in this way. And it's a very important thing to realize, that there is something you can do, that it has to do with your mind, that it has to be with the understanding about how life happens to you, that can change everything and produce a lasting happiness. This uninterrupted state of happiness is only accomplished when the focus is not on objects, sensory objects that could give you happiness, neither on activities and ways of doing things. It's based on noticing the quality of your own awareness, which is a very, 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 very subtle object, is the sense that you're here now, the sense that you are alive right now. Studying that element for long periods of time and many different circumstances, you find something that is always there and is literally uninterrupted, always. And it is already the case for everyone, it's just that we don't notice it. Important note to mention is there's a lot of levels of achievement in this case. I say this because in this spiritual world, there's a lot of people who claim to be awakened. And although it may be true, it's probably a relative truth. Many times these people also commit different kind of mistakes in their lives. And they're human. They're just more advanced. They're just more awakened and definitely probably on the position to teach most people. But we always have to look for the highest examples of these states, and it's people with a huge amount of integrity, and they have certain trademarks like unconditional love for all beings. As much as this sounds as something too abstract and too complicated to reach, it is actually at the tip of your fingers. It's always there. It's in the background of your experience. It's just a shift in the way you see things and how you do things, especially yourself, that brings about a change where you can start noticing that actually, in any case, even in sensory pleasure, the happiness that comes is not coming from the object, it's ultimately always coming from the awareness itself. So try to maximize happiness anytime, anywhere. And naturally, you will start noticing that it's disappointing to start relying on external objects or circumstances or even activities. Nevertheless, do it as much as you can and stay as happy as you can. And ultimately, just realize that we are already there, and what we're looking for is what we're looking with, is your own awareness. The kind of happiness everyone should be targeting. It is there all the time, but it requires a very subtle disengagement of your personal, separated mind, which is fighting in a world against things, against stuff. They have a past, they have a future, they have all these dreams and all these traumas. We need to dismantle that personality little by little by recognizing our nature. And you do that by sitting and meditating. You will start with concentration techniques that will free you, already give you access to the rapture and the happiness of the second state of happiness. But ultimately, you will realize that even that is limiting. It's ourselves, the only reason why we are less than happy all the time. Thanks for watching the video, and sit to meditate.